as Davina McCall in Bo Selecta. Do not say fuck or fuck off. I'll do 3, 2, 1, and we'll start and get into it. Okay. So 3, 2, 1. Hello, Lemur. This is Shane here, and I am very happy to say I am joined by the movie maestro himself, Andy McCarroll Movies, for a very special cast we're putting together for the week of Halloween, where we are going to dive into horror movies. And the main theme of this cast is going to be, I'm bringing 3 of my favorite horror movies to the table. Andy's going to bring 3 of his to the table, maybe more. I think he might have some honorable mentions thrown in there as well. And we're just going to discuss each movie, the reason why we picked it, and no doubt, Andy, you'll be able to throw in some of your knowledge and history and production and everything that goes with it in regards to these movies. So how are you keeping?
Not too bad. And yourself?
No, delighted. I'm really looking forward to this one. I've been trying to get you back on. I know you're a very busy man, and to get hold of you is an absolute honour.
You would think I would be far more interesting for somebody who's this busy.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a good way to do it, Andy, is I'll do one, you do one, I do one, you do one until we get through each movie. So what do you think?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so I, as they say, ladies first. So off you go.
My first one, great question now. I will go for Scream for my first one. Wes Craven, obviously the horror icon who created Freddy Krueger for Nightmare on Elm Street. Also done things like Last House on the Left. Pretty much, the godfather of the kind of modern horror films. Why I picked Scream over Friday the 13th is because essentially the slasher genre was already created. You had things like Black Christmas, which was the kind of the precursor to Halloween, and you had all those kind of themed horror movies that kind of took over and got ran into the ground. What I like about Scream is that it took all of that genre that had been done to death and just made fun of it and kind of pointed out, the horror movie rules, the concept of the survivor girl and all the things you kind of had to do to survive a horror film, but also made it actually quite scary and is a very good, a mystery. There's a great whodunit. And not like a lot of these films where, all of a sudden you see who the killer is and there's absolutely no reason or rhyme to that. They just kind of do a twist for the sake of doing a twist. This was actually really well done, and the 2 killers, spoiler, are just 2 incredible performances as well. Like Matthew Lillard is just one of those actors. I just think, why are you not an absolute superstar? I was kind of doing a rewatch of his stuff lately. And the guy should be like, just, he should have the career Ryan Reynolds had. He is just this kind of rubber-faced, charming bastard, for want of a better term, and something that the rest of the Scream films didn't do. The Scream films ended up turning into, the thing they were parodying. They became these kind of straightforward, slasher films that are doing, ridiculous twists on top of ridiculous twists. But the first film, on its own, if you hadn't done a sequel, I think that would be kind of regarded as, the end of the horror movie genre.
Yeah, and I think you can correct me if I'm wrong with this, but sometimes you can gauge a film's success by the amount of parodies or homage or spin-offs that come off the back of it. And Scream is one of those movies which led to the scary movies, and there was a piss take in those movies as well. So it's no, that's a great choice. I think so.
And Scary Movie was, of course, the original title for Scream. And like you said, that's what it was called up until about 2 or 3 weeks before they started doing all the press release. He changed his mind, Wes Craven, and went with the name Scream. So the kind of the irony of the parody of the horror film that was itself a parody of a horror film being called its original working title. So we're about 7 degrees removed there at that point. So
brilliant. And one of the most iconic horror masks ever made, really. Do you know any history behind who came up with the design for the mask?
It was actually based, obviously, on the painting, The Scream. Wes Craven had always said he had nightmares about that, like Wes Craven, the man who invented knives for fingers, having, nightmares about a painting, essentially. That's what it came from, and also had a kind of a second meaning as well. The painting is called The Scream, and there's a very famous film trope where every time you hear a scream in a film, 9 times out of 10, it's this thing called the Wilhelm scream,
Yeah.
which was recorded about 40 years ago. It's in everything from Star Wars to Sonic the Hedgehog now at this point. So Wes Craven, obviously being a fan of movies and a fan of the horror genre, you have to go again 6 or 7 layers deep before you figure out everything he was trying to say.
I'm going to try and find the Wilhelm scream and edit it into this podcast so people know what we're talking about. Okay, that's a great choice. I'll go with my one then. And the reason I'm going for these is generally I saw most of these when I was young, and they just had such an impression on me as a kid. Probably shouldn't have been watching them when I was so young, but that's usually the way of growing up in the 90s, The first movie I'm going for is 1982 version of The Thing, which was a science fiction horror film directed by the one and only John Carpenter and written by Bill Lancaster, which is based around a research station in the Antarctic, I believe. And essentially they come across a crashed spaceship, and there's I correct myself, that's the original one. This is kind of like a second. They come across a destroyed Norwegian station, and they discover this corpse that has been burnt, and it's frozen in the snow, and it's mutated and all this kind of thing. And essentially it's an organism that it's kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers in one way, that takes over the body of a person and is like a chameleon, and you don't know who is the alien and who is not, and who's infected and who is not. And because they're isolated in the Antarctic, there's nowhere to escape to. And then when they realize that it is an alien, they have to stop it from escaping out to the greater world. And Kurt Russell is in this playing R.J. McCready, and is one of his most amazing performances in my mind. I think he's just absolutely fantastic in this. And it has a real, as I said, that sense of no escape in an isolated, cold, dark area with an alien that basically transforms into the most grotesque creatures at any time. And one of the most famous scenes, which I'm sure you know all about, is when they actually are trying to test out who's an alien and who's not. And a bit of a spoiler alert here as well. Every cell of this creature is alive, essentially. So if you harm the blood, it will react. So one way that they discovered to test for the alien is to actually burn someone's blood, and if the blood reacts, obviously they're infected, which is one of the scariest scenes in movie history. And the practical effects, even now, as I said, it was made in 1982. It stands up better than most movies when it comes to the best CGI there is.
Yeah, 100% would agree with you on that. I think that's something I was, spoiler alert for another film I'm going to go through, The Exorcist. The difference that a practical effect can make. Like, I rewatched in the space of 2 days, I rewatched The Exorcist, The Thing, and The Mist. Now, The Mist is the newest one on that list, and the film I absolutely loved. But they used CGI for the creature effects and that. Now, it didn't help kind of behind the scenes as well that they had their budget slashed in half just before shooting started because he didn't want to change the ending. But you see the tentacle, and it's this CGI thing, and it just completely takes you out of the film. Whereas, like you said, the practical effect with The Thing is absolutely stunning. And there's kind of there's a wonderful moment in that where they try and do the defibrillator through the chest, and it goes straight through. And how they actually done that is they had a guy who was an amputee who had half of his arms were missing. So as soon as he goes to push the paddles, it cuts to him. So it looks like his arms are after disappearing into the chest. Just little things like that, which if they tried to do now, they'd end up spending 2-3 million quid to make that effect, rather than, let's just get a guy with no arms and just cut away at the right time. Like, Carpenter is an absolute genius. And oddly, he is probably one of the best concerts I've ever been to in my life. He played in the Olympia. Was the Olympia? No, sorry, the Tivoli. No, I'm wrong again. It was Vicar Street. Doesn't matter anyway. So a friend of mine had offered me tickets to go and see this, and standing there, you're waiting for the concert to start. I'm thinking, he doesn't have many songs. This is like an 80-year-old movie director going to come out and just play teams or something. So he walks out onto the stage looking every bit the rock star, the long hair, the swagger, goes up to the keyboard, grabs the mic, and is like, my name is John Carpenter and I make fucking horror movies. And then just launches into the Halloween theme. And I was like, this is going to be fucking incredible.
And you've touched on that. I've printed off another page apart from the movies, just touching on something that just helps elevate them to the next level is the music and the soundtracks of these movies. They're so iconic, and most people listening to this who may have not have seen The Thing or the other movies we're talking about now would have seen Stranger Things on Netflix. It's been a phenomenon. The first episode I saw, all I could think of was, this is influenced by The Thing, this is influenced by Halloween, this is influenced because of the style of music. You know, I didn't even have to see this, the opening credits of Stranger Things. I thought of The Thing straight away.
Yeah, the music in that is just absolutely incredible. And it's a good thing you touched on there, because every iconic horror film you think of, you know, you've got The Exorcist has its theme, Halloween has its theme, even Friday the 13th, you've got that weird dins, dins, dins,
Yeah.
dins, cha, 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 cha.
Yeah.
There's always something added to it. And I think that's the difference between kind of good horror and this kind of schlocky horror now. And one thing I noticed as well watching the Conjuring, I've been watching everything. This is like the first October in a long time where I've been able to just really hammer through the horror movies. The Conjuring, which has Carl Chandler in it. It's got Patrick Wilson, Vera Matera. If you have like really good actors, it can sell you on the most ridiculous stuff in the world. Like if you're watching like the haunted house thing and everything kind of ridiculous that's got, I know it's based on a true story in inverted commas, but if you have good actors and good directors behind it, it can sell you on the most nonsensical stuff in the world, and you're absolutely terrified, which is something I think gets lost in a lot of horror now. Because even going back, we were talking before, like when was the last time you saw a horror film and was genuinely scared by it?
Yeah, no, it's on that point. It's kind of being able to tap into your imagination and people's imagination and get them making the monster. That's why Jaws was so effective. Technically, is that a horror movie? Technically, because
yeah, we'll go with you.
Yeah, you don't see the shark, and it makes you think about it. And like most of the time, when people are out, if you're in a dark room at night, or if you're in the middle of a field and it's dark, there's nothing there. But in your mind, you're saying, "Oh my God, there's monsters out there, or there's a axe murderer out there." And if you can get people to do that when they're watching a movie, it just elevates it to the next level. And as you said, if you introduce that type of music that adds to that imagination, just is, I think, key to a good horror movie.
Yeah, and it's actually something I was talking about on my my other show, We Love Movies, plug for myself there. We were talking about the first Saw film, which I think if they had never made another Saw film apart from the first one, that would be that would be spoken of in the same breath as films like Seven. I think that is one of the best psychological thrillers or horrors ever. Not even the last 10, 15 years. I think that is just absolutely phenomenally made. And the sad thing was they took what from that, the thing they took from that and kind of ran with isn't what makes that film good. They took the traps, they took the blood and the gore, and you had things like Hostel, remake of Last House on the Left, that just turned into this like torture porn thing. And like you said, to your point with Jaws, what makes that scary is not seeing it. Whereas with something like Hostel, you're seeing people's bones getting ripped from their body and stuff, and it doesn't mean anything because like you've never had that experience where if you saw something like a paper cut on screen, a lot of people wince because you can relate to that, whereas this is just people being disemboweled. Hopefully you're never going to figure out what that feels like, and if you do, I don't think you're going to be in a position to watch it on screen.
Yeah, so another plug for my company here, less is more, Andy, isn't that right? So right, back onto your second movie.
Yeah, the one I'm going with here is one I'm sure you absolutely haven't seen. It's a film called Rec. It's a Spanish film. It was remade with Jennifer Carpenter, who played Dexter's sister and Dexter / wife / ex-wife. What it is, it was made in 2007, and even then it was kind of like the found footage film had been run into the ground. But this makes it just so fresh and frightening again. The plot of it follows as a TV reporter and our cameraman. They're following a local fire crew around for a documentary. they get attacked by something after entering the building. The military seal it off, and you think it's first of all, you think it might be a virus that they're doing, very timely now, but we find out it's actually basically zombies. But how it's done is each apartment they enter, because an apartment block, everything has its own unique decor, and it feels like a haunted house. Like each building you go into is like a different escape room. And I have to say, the last 15 minutes of that film, my fingers were nearly bleeding having chewed through my fingernails. It is absolutely incredible, and it's something that nobody has seen. It's going to be another film. The two I wanted to kind of get, like, everyone's seen The Exorcist, everyone's seen Halloween. I wanted to get across two films that most people wouldn't have seen. And if you haven't, these are the ones that I come back to. Yeah, the last 10, 15 minutes that I was chewing the hands off myself. It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, you're thinking, pandemic, a zombie, found footage films, all these things that we've seen a million times before, but Rec just does them in a way that you even now you haven't seen it again since. Like, they remade the film nearly shot for shot, and it was much like the Psycho thing, where you're just looking at it going, it's not the same. You've just stripped the heart out of it and all the tension out of it, and just kind of made a beautiful car with no engine.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there in terms of the zombie genre as nearly being so overdone and kind of nearly lost its meaning and has lost its shock factor. So I haven't heard of that one. I'm definitely going to check that one out. I do have a zombie movie on my list, which I'll get to in a minute. And that's a great choice. Thank you for exposing me to that one. I'll go on to my next movie, which is, it is a well, it may not be in the series because most people know, obviously, the Halloween movie. This is actually Halloween 2. And again, this is coming back to my childhood and getting a lend of this on VHS in the original 1981 box. The big black one. The big black.
Yeah, it looks like the cover for Hollow Man, the kind of the black on one side, the white on the other.
Yeah, exactly. And the cover was the pumpkin, I think, with the knife and stuff like that. It just ingrained into my memory and watching it. And it takes off at the end of the first Halloween movie when you think Michael is
Myers.
Yeah. And you have some of the original cast. And of course, we have to mention him again. John Carpenter is the man behind this, written and produced by him. Iconic tune, and Jamie Lee Curtis returns, and Donald Pleasance returns as well as Dr. Sam Loomis. So it's an incredible cast. As you said, the people in it are amazing. And to me, it stands up just as well to the first one. It has that. I was quite disappointed how they removed it from the canon. I know they kind of had to, because he burnt to death at the end, but he burnt to death in the most recent remake again, But I thought they continued the night on, and I don't know what your view. I'd love to hear your take on Halloween 2 as a sequel.
I liked the idea that it takes place pretty much straight after. I think that's something that hasn't really been done and hasn't really been done well. I thought you can see the problems that they had behind the scenes. I know Carpenter was kind of hustled around during that, and different people were taking shots at editing the film. The thing that always stands out for me in that film is the fact that it's supposed to be this busy hospital, and there's one doctor and two nurses in the entire film. So that it just looks very stage on that. So it kind of strips away a lot of the tension for me and the realism, for a haunted house or haunted house film, essentially, with Michael Myers. I don't think it's a patch on the original. I think having rewatched the original as well recently, there's so much of that that's just stripped down brilliance. I think this is the film that kind of launched it off into the the mad direction, the supernatural. Eventually, you'd have like things like the Cult of Thorn, and I don't like the introduction of Jamie Lee Curtis being Laurie Strode being his sister, because I think the boogeyman should just be the boogeyman. I think if you give him a reason, and it's something that the Rob Zombie film's done really badly as well, it's like showing him as a child with Loomis going through the therapy. I think the more, and again, I'm going to use your own point against you here, the more you kind of reveal about the monster, the less scary it is. Like, if it's just this, faceless, William Shatner face coming after, random people, killing them, that's terrifying. But if all of a sudden you're like, I'm kind of, I have a mission here, she's my sister, it kind of takes it away from it. I think the more human you make him, and then ironically they turned him into this, kind of satanic cult puppet. that kind of strips it away. Whereas if you go back and look at that first film, I think that first film as well kind of suffers from the sequels. There's so much you put onto that film that you think is associated with it isn't. Like the first film doesn't introduce the fact that they're brother and sister. He's not in it very much either in the first, and he's just this kind of presence. And I think whereas the second one he became Freddy, he became Jason, this iconic character that you could sell plushy dolls and Funko Pops of.
Yeah, and I think in my defense, I saw Halloween 2 before I saw the first one. So that's probably the impression that why it sticks in my mind so much, and at such a young age as well.
I'll get your excuses in now.
I will again. To counter your point, I just watched a video today on a review of The Boys. I don't know if you've seen that series.
Ah, yes, yeah.
And the character of Homelander, and how terrifying he is. He's basically an evil Superman who was brought up by a corporation and uses social media to put out the facade of being a true hero, even though he's a despicable, sadist, horrible person. But the point this guy was making in the video, which is a very interesting one, which is a complete opposite of what you're saying, is he said the improvement he thinks this TV series Homelander is better than the original comic one, because in the comic one he was more like the boogeyman. He didn't really have any humanity or anything in him, but in the series they make him more human and show his frailties, and because it taps into Jesus, a real human can be this evil. And just when it comes to power and everything like that was a very interesting take of it, because he is like, if you think of if he was a real person, oh my god.
But the thing with that was the shift was to make the shift from that wasn't to make him more human or make him seem more. The whole thing for that was to make the organization shifted then from Homelander being the bad guy to the Void organization being the bad guys, and you're showing, oh well, he wouldn't have been like this if it wasn't for Gus from Breaking Bad pumping him full of this awfulness when he was growing up. But again, doesn't take an awful lot away from Homelander, who's still a bit of an evil bastard as well, to be fair.
Well, this is, I can't think of his name, that the guy who plays him was interviewing. He said he should not be redeemed. He's just too evil. So a bit like our friend Michael Myers. So that was my second one. You are on to your third one now, Andy.
Yeah, so I'm going to stick with my theme of ones that people haven't seen. I'm going to go with a film called Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. I'm sure everyone's just got a blank face on them now, trying to wonder what this is. What this is basically, it's like a fake documentary, a mockumentary, where a bunch of grad students are given permission by a serial killer to go follow him on the job. The thing is, it exists in the same universe as Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger. Like the events of Elm Street and Haddonfield are considered like real events. So you have people kind of talking about the fallout of what happened on Elm Street, what happened on Haddonfield, and his ambition is to basically be spoken of in the same terms as Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger. So he wants to go on this massive killing spree and become an iconic horror serial killer. But what makes it for me is the kind of the behind the scenes footage of all like the stupid things you see in horror films. Like you see his training regime, you see him going through these punishing cardio workouts, and he used to explain it to the camera crew. He's like, well, the reason I'm doing this is because if the girl goes running her ass off, I'm making it look like I'm walking very slow. Then I have to run really fast around the corner to catch up with her to keep the mystique. It's very, very clever. And if you're anyway kind of a horror fan, there's so many little tidbits and little nods to other films that'll really you'll really enjoy. Robert Englund, who plays Freddy, he's the detective trying to chase him down. Kane Hodder, who plays Jason, is in the film as well. And you have things like the kind of the house, the house where all the kids are getting killed. You see him kind of locking all the bottom windows. So typical horror film. As soon as the killing start, the person tries to dart out the front door, but you see he's actually padlocked it. That's why they can't get out. So it's if you're a big fan of these slasher films like I am, you'll see a lot of comedy in it. And plus, again, like Scream, it's actually scary as well when it kicks off.
And you say it's in the same universe, so like it is officially recognized by the Freddy movies, and I know we've got the actors in there, but is it canon, quote unquote?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see it referenced in any of the Halloween or Freddy films, unfortunately. But it's the way it's kind of done is that they are, real people in his world. Actually, I'd love that'd be a crossover. I'd love to see, Leslie Vernon in the same universe. Mike Myers all of a sudden in the background of the new Halloween film. I'd get, me and about 10 other people who've actually seen this film would get a great kick out of that.
Brilliant. And in regards to that one, I'm after forgetting my bloody question here now. Yes, in that universe, does he know that Freddy and Michael Myers are actually like kind of supernatural characters, or does he just think they're just normal people?
Freddy, he knows, is a supernatural. And Michael Myers, a little joke. It's him and his mentor. They're actually, it's very well done. They're making dinner, and they're both, the guy who basically taught him how to be a serial killer, are chopping up the meat and the vegetables for the dinner, and it becomes this kind of competition to see who has like the best knife work. And the guy is explaining to him, like this guy hasn't got the supernatural powers that he's got, so everything he's doing is through hard work. He's not getting help from like a demon and stuff. So it's kind of pitching his boy against the rest of them. Like it's kind of done like a title fight essentially. It's like, well, he's on PED, so this guy's doing it all natural.
Brilliant. I'm definitely going to have to check that one out. Okay, my last movie of the cast is a 1978 movie, Dawn of the Dead, another sequel. Technically, I don't know, would you count the thing as a sequel, but Halloween 2 is a sequel, and Dawn of the Dead is a sequel to the original Night of the Living Dead. And again, this is coming from my childhood. I think it was maybe 10 or 11 when I first saw it. And I saw
How fucking old are you? That was 1978.
Oh, I know, yeah. In the 90s. But again, I saw this before I saw Night of the Living Dead. And what I was just taken aback by this, the whole theme, the style of the music, the cinematography, the whole collapse of civilization, and they don't really know what's happening, and they kind of some people think that they're zombies, other people think that they're just people who are just infected and can be helped, and that just completely I got absorbed and lost in that whole thing. And then it was a kind of a society, civilization crumbles so quickly throughout that movie that people become like Mad Max nearly and out for themselves, and even the way the zombies, like you compare the zombies from Dawn of the Dead to zombies from from the Walking Dead TV series. The Walking Dead TV series, from a prosthetics point of view, just blow them out of the water, but there's something just much more creepy in the Dawn of the Dead. It's like they just paint their faces kind of like green and blue, and there's very little blood in most of the zombies, and I found that for some reason to be more striking. And again, the practical effects that were used in that were brilliant. And there's another very famous artist, if you want to call him, Tom Savini, isn't it?
Yeah,
he's one of the greatest practical effect guys in history is in that movie. He was behind the zombies and that. So I'm sure
Sex Machine from Dawn of the Dead, or from Dusk Till Dawn, rather.
That's it. It's Sex Machine, exactly. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Dawn of the Dead?
I absolutely love that film, and it was one of the horror had this reputation as being this kind of vacuous genre, and I think it's films like this that show you what can be done with that. Like this explores, themes of race, kind of the fabric of society breaking down. Whereas, you could watch it, as you said, as a 10 or 11-year-old kid and just go, oh, this is a zombie film. Or you could watch it now and go, oh, this is like a deconstruction of, Americans' consumerism, or it could be about, racial tension. It can be about, a million different things that George Romero was trying to put across. But on the whole, like, as a horror film, you can just watch that and be scared by it. And to your point, I do think, the makeup effects of things like The Walking Dead are fantastic. But this has an eeriness to it where because they still look human, it just looks more kind of realistic. And like for years, I was kind of thinking, if something like that happened, society wouldn't break down that quickly. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing this year, actually, it probably would break down even quicker than that.
Yeah, well, you look at it here, yeah, what's going on with COVID, but even like in Ireland, when we get a bit of bad snow, people are breaking into Aldi's with JCBs and completely collapses. So yeah, that is always the question with zombie movies, especially with the traditional slow zombies. You're kind of like, there's not a chance that society will crumble. But if you think about it from a psychological standpoint, from a religious standpoint, from just everything, it would just throw everyone's. I think that's why they haven't told us that aliens exist yet, because it would just destroy our what we know about ourselves in the universe. But no, it's just one of those that stuck with me. And then there was the remake of Dawn of the Dead, where they changed the zombies to the sprinters, which it's a good movie, but it's not a patch on the original one.
Yeah. I actually really enjoy the remake of that. I think it's a good horror film. I think it takes some of the stuff from the first film and does it well, but again, it doesn't have the kind of, the social commentary that the original film had, because obviously I think Zack Snyder isn't a patch of a filmmaker as George Romero is. He's very much all substance and no back office, as they say.
Yeah, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong again, I think that Dawn of the Dead remake was one of the first zombie movies where they actually turned them into sprinting zombies.
Yeah, there's actually a great part in Shaun of the Dead as well, where there's like a news report playing in the background, and obviously they have the slow zombies and that. And Simon Pegg was very much, and Edgar Wright are big fans of George Romero, and they're very much against the update. So if you watch Shaun of the Dead, at the end of the film where they're kind of assessing what's going on, you hear a news report saying, reports that the zombies are moving at super speed has been called complete, another bolt, and then just cuts off then.
Yeah, no, because I was especially because I was such a fan of the original one. When I saw they were sprinting, I was like, oh, I don't know what to make of this, but that kind of answers the question. And anyone who was querying, there's no way society would fall down that quickly if they were slow walkers. And you can understand it. But I think, the insidiousness of the slow zombie, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. I don't know if you read the World War Z book.
Yeah.
Incredible. They're slow zombies. They should have made it slow zombies in the actual movie as well. The World War Z. It's an incredible book for anyone who's listening.
I remember seeing the trailer for that, because I'd read the book. I was a big fan of the book, and then saw the trailer for the film. I was like, have they just used the name and it's not the same thing? So I was kind of going back on based on the Max Brooks. I was like, is it though? Like, there's nothing in this. Like, for those who haven't read, the book is kind of told through a perspective of essentially talking heads. The guy is going around, interviewing people that had, lived through the events, and the events are still unfolding. Whereas this was like this, it looked like more of a sequel to the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead than it did an adaptation of the book. Yeah,
exactly. And it is. I actually listened to the audio book of that as well. And Luke Hamill is one of the actors on the audio book, which he's, for most people who don't realize this, Luke Skywalker is one of the best voice actors in the world. So definitely check it out. But Andy, do you have any honorable mentions for me? So you've picked your 3 movies.
Yeah, we're trying to pick ones that are would be considered honorable mentions. Hocus Pocus, which is isn't much of a horror film, but again, I absolutely adore that film. Something I rewatched, I hadn't watched since I seen it in the cinema when it was re-released, and it was one of them that I was like, yeah, no, it's a classic, blah blah blah, but I didn't have any real affection for it. But I've watched it again in the past week, and I really, as when you hear the film, you're going to say, how have you underestimated that? It's The Exorcist. It's just absolutely incredible. Like, there is, obviously, it's been parodied so many times. There's so many scenes in that film that you'll recognize from things like Repossessed, and even just little things that have gone into pop culture. The phrases, the head turning the 360. But the tension in that film, like the actual exorcism in that film, lasts less than 10 minutes at the end of a 2 and a bit hour film. But the last 10 minutes where that's going on, like, you were laughing at kind of the bits and bobs of it. But when it actually all kicks off, it is still to this day absolutely incredible to watch. You were on the edge of your seat watching. Like, it was the most engaged I think I'd ever been watching. I watched it when I was a kid. It was one of the video nasties on a VHS copy, but I think the tracking wasn't right, so you could make out about a third of what was going on the screen. I'd seen it when it was re-released then in the cinema. The audience was it was the square in Tallaght, which kind of gives you an assessment of what it was. So there was lots of people talking. There was people kind of laughing during all the scenes. So it didn't really have an effect on me. Whereas this time I watched it properly, middle of a storm, darkened room. And I have to say, it really did a number on me. Like 2 or 3 days later, you're still kind of the scenes of playing in the back of your mind, or if you're walking through the house and the lights are off, I'm just going to lean back and just flick this light on just while I'm walking down the car, just to be safe here.
Brought you back to religion, Andy, did it?
It really did. I'm going to start putting crucifixes now. Actually, based on what she does with the crucifix in that film, probably not the best idea to leave them lying around.
Yeah. And that's the one thing for my mother anyway. She refuses to watch any horror movies that are centered around the devil. And like I'm a Catholic as well. I probably need to go to mass a lot more, but I do believe in God and I believe in the devil, which kind of for me personally makes them a lot, based on a true story to a certain extent. And they're very, very creepy. And I'm sure you'd know a lot more detail on it. There was a lot of strange happenings on the making of that movie as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was, a lot of the cast passed away in very, suspicious circumstances. Linda Blair, the God lover God lover for want of a better term, like she was absolutely vilified. There was people like spitting on her in public, saying that she'd glorified Satan and was called a devil worshipper. The straps, there's a scene where Ellen Barkin gets thrown back, and the strap she was on just completely twisted her spine to the fact where she had back problems for the rest of her life doing the film. A lot of the cast behind the scenes, mysterious illnesses, tragedy kind of befalling them. Even people in the cinema were passing out and fainting. There was rumors the print of the film was cursed. So kind of it does have an effect on you long afterwards. Like kind of everything that happened. If I dropped a cup in the house, the week after, I was like, oh, that's because of the film. Like it really does. It sticks with you a lot longer than any other horror film that I can think of, and I think it's because of those reasons. And I think when we were growing up as well, that had that mythos surrounding, oh, Jesus, don't watch The Exorcist. Bad things will happen to you.
Yeah, and I'm totally honest here. I've never seen the full movie, and it's one of those ones I still hesitant to even watch. Even though I know that I've read about it, I've seen clips, I've seen trailers, and blah blah blah. But it's one I'm definitely hesitant to watch. I have seen The Omen, which is another movie that had strange happenings on set, or so I've heard. Based around the devil type movies, but they are the ones that really chill me. If there's anyone listening to this podcast now who's in a dark room and listen to us talk about those movies, they're probably getting a bit scared now thinking about it. But
I'm getting scared the way you leaned into the camera there, and I'm in a very light room.
But this is audio; they can't see that. But that's the purpose of this cast, to inform people about cool horror movies, but also give them a little bit of a scare on the build up to Halloween. But I think, Andy, that is a great way to finish up with today's Halloween cast. So first and foremost, thank you very much for joining me. Some great picks. I'm going to check them out. I will put a list of the movies we spoke about in the comments section below. If you have any questions for myself or Andy about any of the movies, or if you have any suggestions of horror movies that you enjoy as well, please do let us know in the voice comment section here on Limor. And if you're listening to this cast outside of Limor, please do download Limor, set up a profile, and get involved in the Limor conspiracy and join the conversation.